verse number 11. First Corinthians chapter 13, verse number 11. Just a little more, please. Let us, thank you. Let us declare it aloud together. When I was a child, I talked like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. But when I became grown, I had to put childish things behind me. You may be seated in the presence of the Lord. I want to preach for a little while this afternoon using as a subject the tragedy of the Gary Coleman generation. The tragedy of the Gary Coleman generation. The star of the show, Different Strokes, is a young man by the name of Gary Coleman, who portrayed the character of Arnold Jackson. In all irony, his life imitated art, or his art imitated his life. What many people don't know is that Gary Coleman himself was adopted at 18 months, never knowing his biological parents. He was adopted by a nurse and a forklift operator. At his peak, Gary Coleman was making $100,000 an episode, who at that time, he was the highest grossing child star in television history. But when it is that the program went off the air in 1986, 3 years later in 1989, Gary Coleman had to file bankruptcy. He had to file bankruptcy. Why? Because his parents stole 75% of his trust. Might I suggest to you the reason why it is so hard for us to get children to come to church, to get young people to become active in ministry, is because the previous generation stole their trust. They really believed that the church was a place where you would be embraced, where you would be nurtured, where you would be developed. And then when they got here, rather than being mentored, they found themselves judged. So it was church people, the very people that claimed that they were going to love them till they got saved, were the very ones who vilified them and pushed them back to the street. It was church people that were more caught up in their clothes than in their character and their consciousness. It was church people who in fact vilified them from the pulpit but forgot to embrace them at the pew. It was church people that were speaking in tongues but forgot to speak to them if they didn't have the right clothes and didn't have the right pedigree. It was church people who liked shouting but did not like walking right past people who were on the bus stop. It was church people that made them feel less than, like they didn't fit in the clique if they did not have the right kind of family image and didn't have the right kind of suburban background, and if they did not know all of the words of the litany, the songs, the prayers, and the scripture. It was church people who didn't want to sit beside them if they didn't grow up in their church, made them feel like they were an outsider if in fact they didn't know all of the church etiquette and all of the church language. And so a whole generation stopped coming to church because they started asking themselves, what's the point? I don't need to come to church for you to tell me everything I'm doing wrong. I know that. That's why I'm in church. I need to know, will you give me a blueprint so I can live a better life when I get out of here? The whole world is beating me down. I don't need you to put your foot on my neck when I come into church. I need you to remind me, greater is he that is in me than he that is in the world. And woe to the church that is losing an entire generation because you're so caught up in whether they got gold teeth and tattoos and braids and sagging jeans and tennis shoes with no shoelaces. Have you forgotten? Man looks at the outer appearance, but it's God that looks at the heart. And so if we're going to be an authentic church to gain the trust, how dare you do your own Census Bureau analysis as to who ought to get grace, trying to figure out whether they're lesbian or gay or straight or a thug or a gangster or a baby mama. Jesus said, come unto me all that labor and I will give you rest. And God is looking for a generation of church people who will stop being arrogant, highfalutin, bougie, and acting like you can point your finger at somebody else. God said, who died and left you in charge? Even when I died, I got back up 3 days later because I knew I couldn't trust you with the church. Gary Coleman lost 75% of his trust from people who were supposed to take care of him, people who were supposed to love him, people who were supposed to be there for him. And Gary Coleman suffered from a congenital kidney disease. And the reason why it was in fact such a volatile place is because your kidney is so critical, because it releases toxins and the impurities that are trapped in your body. Gary Coleman looked natural on the outside, but he was a mess on the inside. And as a consequence, he had to go to dialysis every day of his life. Do you not know? Please do not get people twisted because you're looking at them on the outside. There's a whole lot of us in this room that got some stuff going on the inside of us that we are almost a time bomb waiting to go off. And if we are pushed the wrong way, we might explode at any moment. You don't know what it's like to be angry about a father that ain't there. You don't know what it's like to be frustrated because you can't get support. You don't know what it's like to have family to talk you out of your dreams. You don't know what it's like to be the only one in your house to go to church and they look at you like you're crazy. You don't know what it's like to have been touched inappropriately, to have your mind messed up, to have your body violated, and you come to church and go, look at me, the devil is a liar. I got so much going on in me that I need God to get it out of me. So David said, create in me a clean heart.